Ms. Timmons.
Doctor, before lunch, we started talking about photographs.
Yes,
During all your autopsies, you take photographs, correct?
that's correct.
And prior to court, I asked you to pick out just a few that were relevant to your testimony and to better explain what you've been discussing, correct?
That's correct.
May I approach?
You may.
I'm handing you states exhibits 100 through 118. We're going to go through those one by one. Exhibit 100. What do we see in that photograph?
So this is the outside of the body bag with the body bag seal.
Say what offer exhibit 100.
Any objection? Admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Granted.
Now, when Sterling's body bag arrived to you, it was properly sealed?
Yes, it was.
It hadn't been tampered with?
Correct.
I want to have you look at States Exhibit 101 and 102. First with 101, what will the jury be seeing in that photograph?
So they'll be seeing the baby swing holder, and Sterling in that baby swing as it was received at our office.
And that was relevant to your autopsy and your discussion today. Why?
Because it shows how it was reported to me how Sterling was found at the scene.
And that's important, informing your opinion.
Yes.
Exhibit 102, please tell us what we'll see in that.
So this is a close-up, so you can see closer to exactly how the blankets and how Sterling's head and body position were in the swing.
Something you took into consideration when formulating your opinion?
Yes.
State would offer exhibits 101 and 102.
Any objection? Admitted.
Your Honor, do you want me to ask for permission to publish each time, or can we just put it up?
Mr. Hallbaker?
Once admitted, Your Honor, I have no objection.
Once admitted, go ahead and publish.
So we have 101 and 102 on the screen. And Doctor, it may be easier for you to come back towards my table so you can use the pointer and so Barb can hear you. If you
Okay.
want to bring those photographs with you as well.
Okay. Your Honor, may I get up?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I had granted permission for other witnesses to do this, so
Okay.
kind of got it
Thank
running,
you.
but I appreciate the request.
Tell us about Exhibit 101.
So 101 shows the baby swing. So Sterling actually came with that carrier. What didn't come with the body was actually the holder around it. And so Officer Reed was able, Taylor was able to bring that in so we could reposition exactly as they saw it at the scene. And then in Exhibit 102, you just see a close-up. And this is undisturbed. This is exactly how we received it with Sterling's head tilted to the left. You can see the blanket covering over the lower part of the body, and then his feet exposed out underneath beyond the blankets.
I'll have you now look at Exhibit 103. What is on the exhibits that I handed you? What is that photograph of?
So this is going to be the blanket that you can see over the front portion of the Sterling, and it's just splayed out on a blue background so you can see the size and consistency of the blanket.
So they would offer Exhibit 103.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Please point out to the jury some of the things that were of interest to you on the blanket that was over the top of Sterling.
So what you can see, this is the size of the blanket. This is a 6-inch ruler right here. You can see a couple of these little white marks here. These are actually the maggots that we saw. That will also include other portions of clothing and on the car seat itself.
Was that a thin blanket, a heavy blanket?
It was a medium weight. It was what would typically be used to maybe cover an infant in, or a child in a bed or a crib.
But this particular blanket was more wide up on top of Sterling.
That's right, it was kind of scrunched up. It wasn't folded, but it was just sort of scrunched up and then made to fit over the front portion.
Now, when you first started taking these layers off of Sterling, what were you seeing and noticing? We heard about gnats at the scene. Did you see any of that?
As we noticed that a lot of the clothing that was squished in around the sides of Sterling were wet. They were soiled. The blanket wasn't completely soaked, but there was moisture right around the side that was in contact with the body. And as far as any gnats, what really caught my eye were the maggots and the puparia, which are another stage of the insect activity.
Exhibit 104, what will we see in that photograph?
So this is just going to be a close-up of the blanket, and it shows what I described as those little white things. You can actually make out more that they are maggots on the blanket.
State offers 104.
104 is admitted.
So tell us about Exhibit 104.
So here's the ruler. So there's 1 inch, and then you can see here's a maggot here. There's a maggot here, and they were slowly crawling along the blanket as we moved the blanket from the car seat onto the blue background.
So they were alive.
Correct.
What did you do with these maggots?
Some of these maggots we actually collected and preserved them, both in a media that would keep them alive, and then some that were actually preserved them so it would kill them. And then that was then sent to Dr. Timothy Huntington, who's an expert in entomology or bugs, and that can certainly help us with identifying the species, but also help us with some of the aging and how long those maggots may have been there.
And you said you kept some alive and you put others in a solution that would kill them?
That's correct.
Why do you do that?
The entomologist will use both those pieces of information. They oftentimes will need the live maggots to grow them up so they can do what's called speciate, or tell what type of fly laid the eggs to produce these larvae. And then they want the dead ones so that they can tell what stage in development that larva is. And so by knowing what the species is and what stage that larva is, and then using calculations based on temperature, they're able to make calculations and estimations of how long those maggots have been there.
And Dr. Huntington is someone you've worked with before?
Yes.
All right, Exhibit 105 and 106. Would you take a look at those and tell us what we will see?
Yeah, so 105 and 106 are, so Sterling is still in the car seat, but we've removed the blanket, and so you can see the clothing and exactly his position of his body in the car seat.
And what's the relevance of both of those photographs?
So you can see how the soiling and I think you can even appreciate from the pictures how it's soaked in moisture, and eventually you'll appreciate how the feces is also soaking in.
Offer Exhibits 105 and 106.
Yeah, they're admitted.
All right. What do we see in 105?
So 105 is the blanket has been removed and the seat belt is still latched, and you can appreciate that there's still some other articles of clothing stuffed in along the sides, and we found 3 different onesies. We found some hand mitts for infants, and then you can also appreciate that there's a part of a short sleeve hooded jacket type, sort of a child size jacket in around the car seat and around Sterling's body.
So there's just random clothing stuffed in and around him.
That's correct.
In Exhibit 105, we're looking, if you look at the bottom of the photograph, what are we looking at there?
So there's a tag here, and then this is one of the onesies that was removed as it came. As we removed the blanket, this just fell out as it came out of the car seat. And then here's the tag that was placed by the scene investigators identifying this as Sterling.
Exhibit 106, it looks like you've pulled some more layers off. Tell us about that.
That's right. So now you can see doing a layer-wise picture depiction. So we've removed the buckles, we removed the tag, so you can get a full view of that. And you also get to see the short sleeve hooded children's jacket here, and you also get to see some of the staining and soaking through of feces and urine and moisture in around the pants and the onesie.
So is all of that dark brown that we're looking at on the different materials, is that staining?
Yes.
And staining from what?
Most likely it's going to be a combination of urine, feces, and then probably also some sweat and perspiration.
Why does Sterling have what appears to be blood around his mouth?
So I described it as brown material, so it's basically desiccated, dried out. It could be a couple of different things. It could be some vomitous material, but then also after a person dies, you get what's called purge fluid. So there's a lot of blood that accumulates around very thin-walled vessels in the upper airway passages. Very common when someone dies that you start seeing this material start to seep out. And in this case, it seeped out and dried on the cheeks.
And also in regards to his arms, and his hands and arms have been described as stiff, and his hands are in little fists. Can you explain that?
So rigor mortis is a normal process after someone dies in which the muscles essentially become very stiff, and it takes some effort to move them. And usually rigor mortis sets in a gradual process. So after an hour or so, you start to feel that it increases to its maximum, usually about 8 hours, but as we discussed before, sometimes that can occur in a shorter period of time in warm environments or in people with lesser muscle mass, such as a child. So at the time that Sterling died, he may have been actually clenching his fists, and that's the place that the rigor is going to keep that until eventually it recedes or someone moves it.
If you could look at Exhibit 107 and 108. What are those photographs of?
Okay, so 107 shows where Sterling has been removed from the car seat so we can see what the back of the car seat looks like. And then 108 is this short-sleeved, hooded children's jacket that was, you can see here, that's laid out so you can see what that looks like.
State would offer 107 and 108.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are admitted.
All right, and 107, is that when Sterling was first removed from the seat?
That's correct.
Again, how many more pieces of clothing were underneath him?
So there were 3 onesies, just separate loose onesies. There was this children's jacket. Then there were 3 different like mittens or infant hand covers, and then a sock.
And Exhibit 108, is that just a photograph of the jacket that you pulled out from underneath Sterling?
That's correct.
Is that an infant outfit, or is that more of a toddler jacket? Do you know?
It looked larger than an infant jacket. It looked more like a small child or toddler.
Were the clothing wet when you pulled them out?
Yes, they were wet, and as they went deeper into the closer layers and even the clothing worn by Sterling, it started to have an accumulation of what looked like soaking feces.
I assume that was the smell somewhat overwhelming?
Yes.
And when you were pulling out these separate pieces of clothing and blankets, Were you seeing maggots throughout?
Yes, there are crawling maggots on various articles of clothing as well as on the car seat.
Exhibit 109, what will we be seeing in that photograph?
So 109 is the articles that we haven't seen yet that we pulled out. So I mentioned the 3 different onesies, the hand covers, and the sock.
State would offer 109.
109's admitted.
Tell us what we're seeing in this picture in each article of clothing and where it was found.
Sure. So we've already seen the jacket. We've seen the blanket. What you haven't seen before are these items. So it's 3 different types of onesies, the 3 hand covers, and then the sock.
And all of that was wet.
All of that was wet, and some of it you can even see is stained, and some even had slight soaking of what was probably feces and urine.
Exhibit 110 and 111, what will we be seeing in those?
So 110 and 111 are going to be the car seat in which all the articles have been removed. So you're just going to see the inside covering of the baby swing seat. And then you're going to see the back side of Sterling with his clothes on. And so you're going to see the clothing that is wet and soaked, and you can even appreciate some of the staining by feces.
State would offer exhibits 110 and 111.
Admitted.
Exhibit 110, so you've cleaned everything out of the car seat now.
That's correct.
And you said that there were maggots crawling on that as well.
Yes, you can see there's a couple of white dots there. Those actually are some maggots that remain in the car seat.
And just for the record, you were pointing to the bottom, I would call it the bottom of the monkey foot on the right side of the photograph.
Correct. That was on the left side, yeah.
Exhibit 111, what's the relevance of this?
So this shows so this is the back side of Sterling, and you can see this is the clothes that he was wearing, and you can appreciate almost a grayish film along around the butt that would be covered, the area covering the buttocks and the upper back. So the clothing is wet and it's soaked, and there's this staining and soiling of a decomposing feces material.
And you say decomposing feces material. Is that what you were talking about earlier when you said it was like sludge?
That's correct.
State's Exhibit 112, what will we see in that photograph?
So this is going to be a close-up of the onesie worn by Sterling, and it's a close-up enough so that you can see some of the crawling maggots that are present on the clothing worn by Sterling.
The state would offer 112.
It's admitted.
In Exhibit 112, this is the onesie that Sterling had on when he was found dead, correct?
Correct.
So you've already taken the pants off of him, and you're down to this bottom layer?
That's correct.
And point out, please, where we see the maggots at.
So we have a maggot here and a maggot here.
And for the record, they are the white pieces that almost look like a piece of rice. Would that be right?
That's correct.
The rest of that, where we're seeing more of those dark spots, is that the sludge that you're talking about?
Right, so you can see the onesie really had its native colors of blue, but then you can see areas where it's yellow and brown, and that would be all staining from feces and urine.
Exhibit 113, what will we see in that photograph?
So 113 is a close-up of that, again, that monkey character-shaped lining in the car seat, and we show some of the insect activity, mostly showing a pupa.
State offers 113.
Any objection? It's admitted.
All right, now, the maggots that we were looking at before were white, to put it simply. These look different. Why is that?
Because when the fly lays its egg, then there's various stages in the life cycle,
And so one of those stages is the larval stage and the maggots that we see. And then another stage is this pupa stage. So this just shows that we're going through more advanced stages during the life cycle of the insect activity.
And you collected some of those for Dr. Huntington?
Yes.
Exhibit 114 and 115, what will we see in those photographs?
So we will see as we open the diaper, and you can see what the contents of the diaper looks like in context of how Sterling was wearing it. And then we will see the backside of Sterling now with the diaper removed.
They would offer Exhibit 114 and 115.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
They are admitted.
In 114, please describe that for us and what you observed.
So this is so we see Sterling here, and this is focusing in on the midsection, what we might also describe as the diaper area. So the diaper has just been opened and pulled down. We haven't cleaned up anything. We really haven't touched it other than moving the diaper down. And what you can appreciate is the feces material within the diaper is decomposing. So there's not form or semi-form stool. It's now decomposing into a gray and greenish type sludge-like material that is seeping in over the sides.
When you say decomposing, does that mean it's been there for a while?
Yes.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And in the same area of the diaper, you can appreciate that compared to the skin lower down on the legs, you can see that it goes from this nice tan, smooth appearance to now it's blotchy red, and it's the skin has sloughed off, and you can see that involves the areas of the thighs, over the genitalia area, and it creeps up along the front aspect of the abdomen. This red material, that's what we were describing as a diaper dermatitis or severe diaper rash.
And that's where the infection would enter, is the spots that are red or where the skin is sloughed off?
Yes.
Where the skin is sloughed off, is that also what would attract the flies?
Yes, because the skin that starts to slough off is actually dead, and that's some of the material that maggots would be attracted to.
In Exhibit 115, what do we see there?
So this is so the diaper's been removed, and Sterling has been moved over, so he's face down, and you can see the extent of that same red sloughed appearance. And again, that's that diaper dermatitis that extends all the way from almost just above the knee area over the buttocks and about midway up the back.
Now, when you hear diaper rash, you have the thought that it remains within the area that the diaper's over. Why are we seeing it going so far up into his back and so far down his legs?
Well, a lot of this is probably due to prolonged contact of the skin with this decomposing material and feces. So as this material starts to wick and seep around the edges, and also remember Sterling is lying in a semi-recumbent or lying back position, that material is also going all the way up along the upper waistband area, and it just gets soaked up in along the clothing.
In Exhibit 116 and 117, what will we be seeing?
So they're going to be very similar to pictures of these, but what we've done is we very carefully wiped as much as we could the feces material, so you can see exactly what is the skin appearance of the diaper rash without the feces material over it.
They would offer 116 and 117.
Any objection? They're admitted.
In 116, we see that the diaper's gone, and then what did you do to get Sterling to this state?
So we used essentially like baby wipes. It's a paper type of towel material that we soaked in water and and just very gently wiped it away, being careful not to slough off too much of the skin that had been dying on the surface. And so you can see actually that there's, it's very red, and these areas have all sloughed off skin.
You also see in 116 what to me appears to be his rib cage. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Tell us about that. Do we see that because of the malnutrition?
Well, the amount of fat left in the abdomen is quite depleted, and there's no more really protrusion of the stomach, so that's sunken, and then we can see the bottom of the rib cage here.
Exhibit 117. Tell us about that.
So again, here we've very similar to the photo that we saw in the previous slide, but most of the feces has been removed. And again, you can see the demarcated area, meaning there's a border between what's normal and what is diaper rash. And I think that all correlates pretty much where the feces was in contact with the skin.
And to have prevented this, all that needed to happen was to have a diaper change and be kept clean.
Yes.
What do we see in Exhibit 118?
So 118 just shows the right-sided three-quarter profile of Sterling's head. So you can get an appreciation for when we're talking about the dehydration and the slight sunken of the eyes.
They would offer Exhibit 118.
No objection, Your Honor.
118 is admitted.
Tell us about Exhibit 118.
So you get an appreciation. So this is, again, a three-quarter profile of the face. You can see that the eyes are slightly sunken. There's not a lot of fat around the cheek areas. If you were to pinch that skin, it would immediately stay in a tented up type of position, also going along with the dehydration.
You observed that yourself.
Yes.
Was there anything also about, with his head, did he have any issues about sinking?
Sure. So it's not well depicted, but there are things called fontanelle. So you might have heard about the soft spot on a baby's head, and that's normal. That's so that the skull can grow. When people, especially when children, are dehydrated, because there's just not enough moisture, you actually get a sinking in, or we call it depressed fontanelle. And that, again, is another finding. And that would be right here. And we did notice a depression in the fontanelle.
And that was from the dehydration.
Yes.
Doctor, I'm going to cover this back up. You can go sit down. I'm not going, may I approach you?
Yeah, do you want the lights back up?
No, I have one more thing to show. I have 4 pictures. I'm not going to show them to the jury, but I just want you to lay foundation for them.
Okay.
So Exhibit 119, 120, 121, and 122. Are those photos that you took at the autopsy of Sterling?
Yes, they are.
And was it your understanding these photos had some relevance to Dr. Huntington's discussion?
Yes.
So, Doctor, is it fair to say that all that was needed to prevent any of this was food, water, and cleanliness?
Yes.
You talked earlier about his growth. Have you seen State's Exhibit 99, which is the growth chart that you had done for Sterling?
Yes.
This time we would offer Exhibit 99.
It's admitted.
Permission to publish?
Granted.
Doctor, explain to us, I think most of us have probably seen a baby growth chart, but tell us the basics of this first before we start talking about Sterling.
Yes, so there's two, it's a graph. So along the bottom are the age of the infant in months. And then there is, on the bottom portion, there's, as you go up, that gets higher in weight. And then there's a second graph along going vertically, and that's the height, both in centimeters and inches. And then you can see that there's these curved lines, a series of them, and they're associated with these numbers 5, 10, 25. And those are curves based on statistics in which they look at a number of different children. They come up with a percentile of where children will be as they progressively get older, where they are relative to the rest of the population. So when we talked before about the staying on the curve, so you might have a child that's born and they might have a weight that's going to start right in the 50th percentile, and as long as they continue to increase their weight along this same curve, a pediatrician is going to be happy with that and not suspect that something's happening. If a child starts along this curve and then all of a sudden they just drop down here in their next visit, they know something's going on that needs them to inquire more, maybe do some tests to figure out what's going on.
Tell us how this chart is applicable to Sterling.
So with Sterling, we said we have 2 points. So we have, let's take the weight, for instance. He was born right at 3.02 kilograms. And then this, I have it here, he's almost, it probably should be right about out here because he was almost 4 months old. And he just barely moved up above that to 3.15. So just about, he grew about 5 ounces since his birth weight.
So he wasn't even close to being on that chart.
No.
And then when you look at the length?
So when we look at the length, he was born right here, right around a little bit above 18, this is inches right here, a little bit of 18 inches. And then we measured him right about 21 inches. So he did grow just a little bit under 3 inches. So he was growing. We don't really know where he would have been on the curve. So we don't really know where he was. But he was growing in length as opposed to not really growing in weight at all.
But as you stated earlier, that tells you that he had the ability to grow.
That's correct.
So where he was born at, the weight, where should he have been on that chart? What would a normal child his age be on that chart?
If we assume that he was born at a low weight, so even if he stayed in the low 10th percentile, so he was born just a little above the 10th percentile, he probably should have been closer to probably 11 to 12 pounds. And there's reason to believe, depending on the size of his parents, and you could also make an estimate of maybe he would have been a little bit higher in that. But at the very least, he probably should have doubled his birth weight by that time.
So he should have been 11 to 12 pounds, and how many pounds was he at his death?
Yeah, he was just a little over 7.
And what about his height?
His height, again, was 21 inches. If he stayed on the curve, he probably should have been closer to probably the 23 inches or so.
All right, doctor, that's the cause of death that we've just discussed. Let's talk about manner of death. You said that manner of death in this case was homicide, correct?
Yes.
And what do you base that opinion on?
The autopsy findings, the circumstances surrounding death, and the tests that I did around the death.
And what do you mean by circumstances surrounding the death?
It's the information I received from police and investigators as to the conditions of how the body was found.
And when you say homicide, earlier you described that as death at the hands of another. So how does that fit into this case? So
when you have a person who is dependent on another person for their survival, the neglect or the absence of that critical care also falls under that at the hands of another. So it's an act of omission rather than commission.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Cross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon.
I just have a couple for you. I think earlier on in your testimony, you described, at least as it relates to an infant, that we all know that they will cry when they're hungry, and that's about the only way they have to get attention, correct?
Correct.
And the difference between an infant and, say, a toddler is that a toddler is ambulatory or mobile,
Yes.
can move around, and so in addition to vocalizing in whatever way they can, distress or need for food or something like that, they can actually go to their caregiver, correct?
That's correct.
And presumably then, obviously as we progress over time, ultimately we become able to take care of ourselves, but the toddler would have a better ability to at least obtain assistance or help than would an infant.
That's correct.
During your autopsy, did you find any evidence of trauma physically to Sterling in the form of bruises?
There was one small little injury on the hand I think was insignificant.
How about lacerations or cuts?
No.
Any broken bones?
No.
Do you know what I mean when I say spiral fracture?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain to the jury what a spiral fracture is?
So a spiral fracture is, it's not uncommon, especially in younger children. They fall off, jungle gyms or things like that, and it's a fracture that looks like a curve, and you can see that pretty readily on X-ray.
And sometimes spiral fractures can be the result of physical abuse as well.
They can be, yes.
Homicide and your other options, you have accident, natural causes as far as the manner of death, is really a medical determination. Fair enough?
Yes.
It is not a determination of guilt or innocence or the level of crime that someone may be convicted of. Fair enough?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Does this witness be excused?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Doctor, you're free to leave.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Let's take a few minutes here just to regroup, walk around a little bit, catch your breath, and we'll be back in about 7 minutes. Just after watching that, let's just take a little break, okay? Continue to heed the admonition. I figured we're not going to have any trouble getting done today, correct? We're not going to have any trouble getting done today? No. All right. I just could sense that they could use a bit of a break, so.